Hi there, folks. Saber4 here, back with a much overdue start of the Secrets of Power spoiler season. In this video, we're going to start talking about Secrets of Power. I know that we've had a little bit of things since the Galactic Championships, but we're going to go ahead and start by taking a look at the new mechanics, which include plot and disclose. We'll do a little bit on the spotlight leaders and on the leaders that have come out. This being Wednesday, I've actually got one to add down towards the bottom. We'll look at the new token, we'll look at some of the returning mechanics, and then go through some of the cards by aspect. I'm not going to do every single one, but we will talk about quite a few of them that are there. This video will have some updates as we go along through spoiler season, so this is round one, but here we are. If you have a moment, please like the video, please subscribe to the channel, really helps out a ton with growth. Let's go ahead and dive in. All right. New mechanic, number one, plot. Cards with plot are allowed to be played from your resource row when your leader is deployed. They are replaced with cards from the top of your deck, much like Smuggle, but they do not get an additional cost. They cost just what they would play to come out. They cost just what they would cost to play when they come out with the leader. And so this is action compression. This is something that we saw a lot with Kylo Ren, the leader in set 5, where we were able to play things from our discard. Here, instead of having them in our discard, we're playing them from our resource row. And so this is the only time you can play a plot card without some kind of special exception. But it allows those leader flips to be much more impactful because instead of spending our resources and taking time dirtling and doing other actions during our leader flip turn, we have the opportunity to deploy several units, to deploy upgrades, to deploy other things like that that come out with plot. Now, you could play these cards at any other time. So you could use, as our example here, you could use Masamita at any time and give an experience token to 2 other official units. There are a ton of officials in this set. Last set, we got a bunch of Force units. This set, we're going to get a lot of Republic. We are going to get a lot of officials. We're going to get a new token, which we'll talk about in a minute, and some mechanics that work around it. But you could play this card at 4. It's going to be a little understated at a 3-4 for stats at that spot because a 3-5 is pretty standard for a 3-cost card. But you're also going to be able to put out 2 experience tokens, and so you really do get 5 and 6 worth of stats when you spread that out, and that also leaves some of your other units a little bit less vulnerable. But he has plot, and so if you play when you flip your leader, you could play this from your row. Pay the 4 cost. If your leader is an official, you could give your leader an experience token and 1 other official. You could choose to use this however you want. But there are other cards with plot. This is one of the 2 key mechanics. The other mechanic is disclose. Cards with disclose allow you to show cards from your hand when a certain condition is met. In this case, with Vice Admiral Rampart, as we have shown, on attack, you are disclosing cards. And so when you manage to meet that condition and you disclose the proper cards, you take the action that's listed behind it. The disclosed cards can be any number of cards, but you have to satisfy the icons that are listed in the text, which is why we used Rampart as the example. FFG has said that there is a card with 5 different aspects printed on it. So I imagine there's going to be some disclosed that has a very large amount of requirement, but we'll see what happens when that comes around. In this example, you're going to have to show 2 green, so 2 command and a villainy, which means that you're likely going to have to show at least 2 cards, and you could show 2 command villainy cards for all that it matters, and you will have met the requirement. But here again, if you, on attack, reveal 2 command and a villainy, you give an experience token to each of 2 other units. Leader Spotlight. Let's dive in, number 1, with one of the 2 leaders that comes in the Spotlight decks. This is Chancellor Palpatine. Previously, I've done a look at the leaders by type and talked a little bit about what sort of leaders we have. I'll go back and do another of those videos after we get the leaders for this set. But this Vigilance Villainy leader is a deck filtering type. Yoda did deck filtering to a degree. Some others do deck filtering to a degree. Kylo Ren did deck filtering to a degree. What you're going to be able to do with him on his leader side is to use an action, use one resource, search the top 5 of your deck for a card with plot, reveal it, and draw it. Now, that means that you're also going to cycle 4 cards down. So every time you're looking at things, you're going to see what's in there, draw a card with plot if one is there, cycle cards to the next set. Sometimes you're going to cycle down things you might not have wanted to, but that's just kind of the nature of this. But if you are heavy with the plot mechanic and you want to get some specific things down in your resource row, this is going to give you an opportunity. There may be other cards like Masamita, the example that we had, which are cards you want to play now. So far, the cards that we've seen with plot have been either a little understated or have been a little specific. But we'll look at that a little bit more as this set develops. On his unit side, when he flips for 7. And he is a 6/8 Republic official. Now, Chancellor Palpatine does not have the Force trait, but what he does have is a very big body for 7. 6/8 is a very nice stat line. But when he is deployed, he may play a card with plot, as all leaders can, and the first card that he plays with plot this phase costs 3 less. So, on his flip turn, he is able, if you are playing with plot or you're playing cards with it, to deploy up to 10 worth of cards, because you could come out and play this from your row, play a 7 cost for 4, and then continue on to play other plot cards at their normal value. So you could really come around and get a very large turn with Palpatine, depending on what shows up with plot. And that also leaves behind a 6/8 body that they have to contend with. Our other spotlight leader is Padme Amidala. Padme is a cunning heroism leader. She is a ping type. When you reveal or discard 1 or more cards from your hand, you may exhaust this leader. If you do, deal 1 damage to a unit. And so this is an unrestricted ping, and it is a targeted ping. Quinlan pinged based on the cost of a card. He had to put down something that cost the same as something that was on the board. You weren't as restricted with Cad Bane, but Cad Bane could be functionally turned off in several decks by having something out there because it was your opponent's choice for what to ping. With Padme, that is not the case. As long as you disclose or discard a card, you may exhaust her to deal damage to a unit of your choice. Now, she is a 6 deploy. 3/8 is a decent size for that. We are seeing stats. That's a little bit, it's kind of on par, I suppose. We're looking at Quinlan, for example, being a 3/7, but we're also looking at Quinlan being rotated out very soon. So we do have some kind of precedent for where we're going with these 6-cost leaders, and she's going to be right in the mix once that rotation comes around. She is a Naboo Republic official, which is an interesting thing because that's kind of a new set or a new identity group. Same ability, no exhaust required, and it's unlocked. We don't have to do it just once. So if we have multiple actions that allow us to reveal cards from our hand or discard cards from our hand, which keep in mind, Force Throw could cause you to discard a card. So Force Throw can now activate Amidala's power if your opponent chooses you. No exhaust required, and the ability is unlocked so that it may continue to be used as long as she is on the table. We jumped 1 more with the leader spotlight group, and we're going to talk about Deidre. She is an aggression villainy leader, and she is also a ping type. A little bit better off than what Kit Fisto had. Kit Fisto required you to attack with a Jedi, which meant that you were a specific build around in order to get that daring raid on the card that he had. That's not the case here. She just has daring raid built in. The drawback here is that your opponent can choose not to damage what's on there, and if that happens, you draw a card. So this is very much a win-win for you. This is one of those few times where we see your opponent gets to choose, and you win either way. With Watto, that was definitely the case when we were talking about, well, especially when we were talking about sealed play. But with Watto, that was definitely the case. Either way, you were going to come out ahead. With Deidre, this is definitely the case because her flip side, she is a 4 deploy, where she is a 2/5 body. This is the same stat line that Sabine has. And as long as you have more cards in hand than an opponent, which I guess an opponent would say in Twin Suns, having an opponent means that you have anybody at the table, but then your opponent, she gains raid 2. So attacking into her is still only going to do 2 damage back, but her attacking is going to do 4 as a natural shot instead of Sabine doing 3. She does not get to step around sentinels for that damage. She doesn't get to ping the base automatically, but she can attack into units for a little bit bigger. She's the first ping draw option that we've seen. And so either way gives you 2 favorable alternatives because the draw means that you're very likely to have more cards in hand than your opponent, even if you are playing a go wide deck. You're still very likely to have more cards than your opponent early on and to be able to use her as a 4/5 attack. So, new token and the returning mechanics. The new token is a spy. Like many things in this set, the spy is an official. There are many, many cards right now with printed ways to create spy tokens. It is an 0-2 raid 2. And so your opponent's, attacking into it is going to do practically nothing. Most things defeat a 2 with relative ease. But it is an official, which is going to turn on a lot of different abilities. There are several ways right now to, as long as you've been attacked with an official, something gains bonus, or to sacrifice this card in order to gain bonus with one of the cards that came out today, which I have not put in here. I will put that in round 2. Confirmed mechanics that are returning include capture and hidden. Capture is on several cards in this set. I believe they said somewhere around 11. Hidden is on at least the Anakin card that's in Cunning. And so we do know that mechanic is coming back. We also have several keywords that are on cards that have been revealed already, and those include Restore, Ambush, Sentinel, and Saboteur. So we expect that a lot of the very common lines are going to stick around and that we're going to continue to see several of the things that we saw from the early sets that continue to get play as these become the core set, or a core set rather than the extension of play. All right, let's dip into some cards, shall we? Cad Bane. Cad Bane is a devastating gunship with plot. When he's played, you can defeat a unit with 2 or less remaining HP. This is very similar to the devastating gunship that was also blue-black, was also 5 cost. With the Chancellor Palpatine, you can play this guy out for 2 and defeat a card that has 2 or less remaining HP. He does not have grit, but he does have 4 power. So this is a nice little way to get Cad Bane on the table, especially Cad Bane in blue. Now, keep in mind, you could play this in a Cad Bane blue deck. And just because Cad Bane's leader does not talk about plot doesn't mean you can't use it. So here's somebody where you can get Cad Bane on the table. You can immediately deal 2 damage to a unit. Hey, look, now it has less HP. And so you could defeat it. So there's a lot of different ways that you could do this. Early insurance, the Chancellor's Shuttle. Here's a 2 cost, nice, easy thing to put down there. If you play it in a Palpatine deck, you're going to be able to give another unit an experience token. But it's restore 1, and so if your opponent doesn't start out in space, it's only pinging for 1. It's not really doing that much out there, but its delta is 2 because it's a restore 1 for you and a 1 damage to their base. And if they go out there and defeat it, free experience as long as you've got another unit on the table. One good piece of thematic design here is the Cantwell Arrestor Cruiser. When played, you can disclose, and so this is the other mechanic now shown with something that could be very easily in a Palpatine plot deck. Disclose 2 blue and a villainy. if you do exhaust an enemy unit. Now, the trick with this is that as long as the arrestor cruiser is on the table, this works much like a frozen in carbonite. So as long as this unit persists, which it's a 6/7, so not terribly easy to get rid of, you are able to lock down an opponent's unit that is in play. Few more that are here in Vigilance. The Blockade, Nuke Gunray, which again, nice thematic play. Early deploy, we've got a 3-cost Separatist official with grit, and when played, you can give another official unit Sentinel for this phase. You can also do that on attack, and so he is able to set up a situation where he is able to keep other units as Sentinels. And as long as you continue to be able to have some of these on the board and have good board presence with your Sentinels, he is able to create a blockade to slow things down tremendously. The Draft Dodger, a card that I'm still probably not picking up unless it's in a draft and I'm playing blue and I don't have another option. Armor of Fortune. Here's an example of where we say plot cards might not always make it into the deck. When you deploy a leader and this plot card is in your resource row, you could make your leader bigger. You could get a bigger body on here and get a +0/+3. There's definitely leaders, especially ones that are early on, where this might be beneficial. You've got a leader that has 5 health. Now it's got 8, much harder to kill, especially if we're talking very early. And if you're sitting on, I don't know, let's say red-blue as a villainy deck in a pre-release, all of a sudden you're looking at a 2/8 leader that came out on 4, next to impossible to kill with raid 2 because you're playing this card from your resource row instead of from hand. By the way, later on down the line, once we've done a lot of these, we will get another of the Win Your Prerelease videos. Anyway, we have Heroic Snoke. So Bo-Katan Kryze, 8/8 for 9, which, a lot of the cards that we've seen so far have led us to believe that the game which is very much mid-range and is very much played at the 6, 7, 8 in some decks, and that's kind of as far as they go, and usually that's as far as the game goes. A lot of these cards that are coming out are 7, 8, and 9, and so kind of leading us to believe that the power levels of the game and the kind of stalls in the game built in through either Sentinel or Restore are leading us to a place where the game is probably going to go longer. Bo-Katan gives each enemy unit -3/-3 for the phase, and when an enemy unit is defeated, you may give an experience token to a friendly unit. So if you've got a couple of friendly units on the board and you play Heroic Snoke here and those enemy units all go away because she gave them -3/-3, well, those units were defeated. Bo-Katan got to see it, and a lot of your units got experience tokens. So Bo-Katan can really do some interesting things when she comes in. That is an interesting degree of power for a 9 cost, and then she sticks around with an 8/8 body. Let's move into command. Captain Typho. Here we got an interesting one that's part of the starter set. Obi-Wan in the starter set as a 3-cost, 3/5 Sentinel became very quickly one of the more valuable cards in Legends of the Force. Captain Typho is poised to do that to a degree in this, because if you are playing any kind of Heroism Command, you're probably going to have a Heroism Command card in your deck. As a Sentinel, he's going to be attacked, and if you disclose a Heroism green card, you may heal one from your base. And so people who are trying to clear Typho will at least heal you for 1. Maybe more, depending on how much he's going to stick around for. Officials. We said that there's a bunch of them in this set. Here is a command card that allows for growth on officials, so giving an experience token to up to 3 of them. Again, one of these cards that a lot of the leaders are officials, a lot of the units are officials. We're going to get, you can get a pretty wide net with this. Again, probably one of the cards that you're going to see more in sealed play than in constructed, but Budget Scheming, a very interesting card here in the early release. We also got Mon Mothma, which is Power Creep and T. Um, this is very similar to the stat line that Luke has. Doesn't do quite the same because it doesn't automatically kill off a unit, but comes with Restore 3, which is something that, the Luke who is going to rotate out soon, also has. But when she is played, you may attack with any number of your other units, even if they're exhausted. And so you could play through your stuff, and if you still got 7 resources up, play Mon Mothma, attack your way through their lineup again. If you got anything with Overwhelm, you can go ahead and Overwhelm into the base. The only caveat to Mon Mothma's ability is that the units that attack from her cannot attack base for those attacks. A few more cards in command. One is Rewarding the Flood. So the personnel carrier here on 8, which again, a lot of these cards we're seeing 7, 8s, and 9s. 6/6 Overwhelm, but give this unit an experience token for each ground unit you control. Well, take a look at what's next to him. Chancellor Palpatine, the I Am the Senate Chancellor Palpatine, who has plot and only costs 3. Blue-green command villainy, or command vigilance command villainy can play Chancellor Palpatine in the plot space on 7, create a couple of spy tokens. It's going to leave 4 ground units behind if nothing else gets killed off, or you might leave more than that depending on what's there, and then come back with some severe overkill the next turn as you drop a 11-11, 12-12 Primor personnel carrier. So pretty easy to get that thing, to see where that thing can be juiced up very quickly. I Am the Senate, because also I Am the Senate is a card, which, just dead creates 5 spy tokens. So again, these are officials. They're O2s, but they're O2 raid 2s. Do I really want to create 10 worth of attack next turn that my opponent doesn't have to really do that much to get rid of? Perhaps not. But as a starter set card and in the right circumstances with sealed, that might be a good thing. Let's look at some aggression cards. And one of the better aggression cards came out today. Like I said, we will look at it in a future version of this video. We've got some hard push for discard. Silren Karn can force discard from turn 2. If you're playing red villainy, you're definitely going to be able to show 2 aggression and a villainy. Choose a unit and deal 2 damage to it unless its controller discards a card. Early on, this kind of ping can be absolutely destructive. When you combine that with the ability of with the ability above, and you're talking about being able to ping and draw, followed by being able to ping or damage, very easy to see where you could force your opponents to discard, force your opponents to give you a card in order to keep from damaging one of their key units or one of their early units, and be kind of off to the races as far as having a greater hand size than your opponent. There might be something coming along the lines that punishes a greater hand size. For right now, there's only a reward. Chopper, no, really, discard harder. Here's a 4/1, so really easy to get rid of. But when you deal combat damage to a base, when this unit deals combat damage to a base, each player discards a card from their hand. So yeah, that doesn't hurt a lot. But early play, you get this guy out. You're not going against a ping deck, and you get initiative. You're gonna bleed their hand pretty quickly. On second thought, Topple the Summit. Here's a plot card that does 3 damage to each damaged unit. So, yeah, it's going to cost you a lot of resources, costing 5 to come out there. But everything that's damaged on on both sides, because that doesn't say each opponent's damage unit. Everything that's damaged, take 3 more. Yeah, you want to really mess things up, put this in a Kira red, and watch everything that's damaged bleed more, including Kira. Hey, look, now she's a 7. Did it kill off some of your opponent's units? Did it keep them from attacking her? Sweet, swing for 7 on your deploy. Some more cards in aggression. Let's talk about It's Not Over Yet, and what you're going to be able to do with that Legends of the Force Leia. Get to ready a unit that didn't attack or enter this phase. Well, that Leia can't ready while she's in space, and so as long as it's next turn, I can ready that unit and create a spy token. I think I'm okay with that. Create my force token, move her to the ground, make everything +2/+2. Sounds like a pretty decent option at times. Just a thought. About those tokens and about those experience tokens you're giving out, here is a 3 cost when played, defeat all non-unique upgrades on a unit. So if you're thinking of stacking a lot of tokens on one thing, think again. And finally, the Fulmantrix. What fleet is this attacking? This is the fleet killer, but every time it attacks and when played, you can deal 4 damage to a ground unit. Which fleet's on the ground, guys? I'm not mad at a 9/7 capital ship for 8. This is the same stats, a little better stats than the Devastator had. But where's the fleet? It's Star Wars, folks. Star Wars in space, fleets. All right. Spoiled cards and cunning. So a hidden problem. This again is a Padme starter card. Starter set card, and this is Anakin Skywalker, who is hidden, and as long as Padme is your leader or a unit, this has raid 2, so a 3 cost 5/4 that your opponent cannot attack. This is pretty well positioned and a nice powerful card if Amidala becomes any kind of playable. Speaking of Padme activation, Furtive Handmaiden, on attack, discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Filter to activate Padme's ability. Okay, great. And comes out for 1. Nice and easy. But this is a 2/2 stats on 1, which is what we saw with a lot of things that are 2 cost already. And so this is, it doesn't have a shield, so it's not quite the same as Secretive Sage or as, what's he called? Come on, you can do this. I know it's late. It doesn't matter. This comes out for a lower cost than Secretive Sage, but Secretive Sage comes out with a shield. 4 stat points for 1. Only R2 is better. This is a pretty good little spot for another of these starter deck cards. Okay, one of these out of place, but Miss Andor here, when defeated, gives an experience token to each friendly rebel. And so while we still have that in play, we do still have some ability to really make some interesting rebel decks. This is a thing that with rebel synergy can make things quite powerful. You can attack into units that are going to do 4 back, spread some experience across yours. You can lightning rod her a little bit and make sure that when she is defeated, that other things get those experience tokens. This is a pretty good one, especially for something that is rebel heavy. This set is not particularly rebel heavy from what we've seen so far, so this might not be a very good draft card, but an interesting card nonetheless. An example of where plot cards can be kind of bad. We saw a 2/2 for 1, and here we have an upgrade that's plot that's 1/1 for 2. Sneaking Suspicion, is an example of where the plot cards might be practically unplayable in your deck. Hunter. So many interesting things. Why not Ambush? I'm going to be interested to see if set 7 gives us another Ambush base similar to what ECL was. But we lack some of the pop that we get with Wrecker. We get the same stats. We do not get Overwhelm. We get Saboteur instead. But the interesting thing here is the on attack. This is Hunter fills a very different role than Wrecker, where Wrecker comes out for immediate burst. Hunter comes out and is a board killer. He's going to be able to come out, and as long as you have an opponent's unit that is exhausted, -4, -0 to that unit, and with 6 health, that's a little bit harder to get through. You're probably going to 2-for-1 your opponent with this if it is allowed to stay on the board. Interesting power curve here with the Mandalorian. Again, another 8 cost, but 8 cost with Ambush, and you may capture. So this has Ambush and Capture on it. So you can capture an enemy non-leader unit when this attacks and defeats a unit. So it can come out, immediately attack and defeat a unit, and capture something. So, you've effectively 2-for-1 your opponent's board. If your opponent is playing a bunch of spies, ambush the spy, it does no damage. And you've got a 6/8 undamaged unit that captured something else that's more valuable. And so those spy tokens can become a little bit of a liability when you start looking at things like the Mandalorian. All right, one update since this is Wednesday. I didn't include any of the cards from today, but I did want to include the other leader, and that is Satine Kryze. Her leader side, she is a Vigilance Heroism Mandalorian official, and she is an anti-ping. So this is kind of new. Obi-Wan had a similar ability, though it was not quite as powerful, but it also didn't do damage to you. So as an action, you can heal up to 2 damage from a unit, and if you do, deal that damage to your base. So if your opponent is pinging and you still have the ability to take an action, this creates a situation where they can't just automatically Tarkin Town you out of your first turn. At a cost of 2 base health, which there's going to be situations where that just does not matter to you. As a unit side, she is a 5 deploy, but she is a 0/8 body, which is again interesting. Satine Kryze is a pacifist here, but she has the largest restore of any unit that we've seen in this set, and matching any unit that's in the game. As an 0/8 Mandalorian official, she attacks. As long as she doesn't attack base, or if she attacks a spy or something similar, she doesn't take any damage back. She might be around for a little while because it's also on 5 resources, which means that there's not a whole lot that's going to just one-shot her. And she's Restore 4. So, your first couple of turns, you have kept some of your units alive and healthy. Your opponents might have attacked into them to try and get some damage on them. And as long as they didn't outright remove them from the board, you have the ability to keep them, do a little bit of damage to your base, and then heal it right back very quickly because her deploy is very early. She does create a little bit of a lightning rod because Restore 4 is not something that your opponent can take lightly. I talked about Director Krennic in set 1 being something that you might consider not attacking. If that 2 damage and 2 restore was not going to hurt your math too much, and you couldn't outright one-shot him, do you attack into him and make him a 3? Where your delta is 5. That's some tough math. But Restore 4 is significant. We saw this with Restore 3s that we have with Rey and Luke, and how significant that can be and how quickly. This is bigger, and bigger on a 5 deploy, so it's bigger and earlier. Hard to say how much power you're going to get out of a leader that doesn't impact the board damage-wise, but the amount of healing you're going to get out of her is significant. And already one admitted mistake. FFG, when they showed Win Has Become Now, have shown you that there are going to be ways to play cards with plot from your resources, not when the leader is played. Players immediately noticed what was the problem with this, and you're going to get a day one errata out of this because I think a lot of these were printed prior to them being revealed. You'll probably notice it too. The phrase "if you do" is not on here. And so as a result, for one cost, you take the principle of the game, which is to say, do as much as you can. You don't play a plot card from your resources, and you put the top card of your deck into play as a resource. So one cost ramp, obviously not what was meant to be. This is an uncommon, so it's going to be just out in the wild in the set. So again, playing your pre-release, do not think that this is one cost ramp. Don't be conned into believing that it's one cost ramp. But there we are. So that wraps it up for set one, or for part one of the set 6 spoiler release. We'll come back in a week or two and look at some more of the cards and kind of start breaking down what we're getting. Once we get kind of critical mass, we'll do a couple of decks that look at how we can either incorporate some of these into existing decks or how we can create some sort of built around the new leaders. But there we go. We will see you guys next time. Until then, may the force be with you.